did a ride along with a cop, and it was really interesting, like how many different things we did. Like one of our first stops, we had to respond to a call of a guy saying that some homeless person stole a bike and he had it on video camera. So we responded. The guy let us into his house. We looked at his like over the top security. It seemed like this guy was into something. Like there has to be a reason that he has all this security. He showed us all these different angles of this homeless person stealing his bike, and basically the officer just had to write everything down so when he went back at the end of the shift he could write a report on it. And then we went and we responded to a domestic violence situation at a hotel where the man allegedly beat the woman and ran. And then we responded to a 13-year-old girl who attempted suicide, and we had to take her to the emergency room. And that's the one that I told you where they thought I was the mom. And I was like, no, I'm not the mom. I'm just doing a ride along with this police officer. And we had to stay in the emergency room for like probably 3 hours with this girl because
why do we not remember this? I'm sorry.
Oh, well, we couldn't leave her unattended. And the emergency room was understaffed like always, and so they didn't have anybody to stay with her, so we had to stay there for like 3 hours in the emergency room with her. And we had to like take her because she had to do like a urine test and she had to do blood tests, and we had to just follow her because we, at that point, the mom signed over the rights to her, and now we were her legal guardians for this situation because she was getting prepped to enter into the psych ward. And so until she was officially signed into the psych ward, we couldn't leave. And so we had to, like, the cop had to basically stay there for 3 hours of his job to just stay with this girl. That situation was actually very sad. And then after that, we ended up responding to like this homeless guy at this random place. He was like, meet me at the corner of this Denny's on these streets. And so we responded and met him there because he had called into dispatch. And then he went off like on all this crazy thing. And the cop would end up having to write a report about that, responding to that call at the end of his shift. And then after that, I think one of our last calls was we went and we responded to a alarm going off on a house, and it ended up being a false alarm. The guy had just changed the password and couldn't remember the new password. And it was just weird. It was just like, this is your job. Like, this is what we did. Like an
average day.
All 10 hours. This is what we just did. Like
the average is just chaos and unpredictability.
And it was weird because when I first got in the cop car too, like right in between me and the officer was just a gun. Just sitting straight up in case we needed to use it. And then they always leave the cars running wherever they go.
And the officer seemed like he had his stuff together? I mean, clearly he did.
Oh, the officer definitely had his stuff together. He knew all his things. Like he was a veteran. He had been there for a long time. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, no, I'll take the ride along today. So. Wow. It was interesting. It was just like, I couldn't imagine because there was so much idle time. Even at one point, we were just driving around to see if we could find anything, and he was just running license plates through the reader, and we found a license plate that the guy was, oh yeah, I forgot about this one because this one took like an hour. He found a license plate for the guy that had a license that was revoked, and we pulled him over, and he made like a whole scene, and they ended up having to arrest him, but another cop ended up showing up and taking him to the jail. We did go to the jail at some point, and he just dropped him off with check him in once they officially checked him in. But that was a quick process because at this point it was like 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And I remember being so grossed out because the person that we took to the jail had peed themselves. And then they have to do like the pat down. Yeah. I couldn't. And there was now I'm just remembering all the situations. Actually, this was a very eventful night.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jesus.
Because we responded to a hotel in the middle of the night, and they had to spray the like girl with pepper spray because she went to the front desk and she wasn't going to pay her bill. And so she was trying to leave, and then the guy who was handling the front desk sprayed her with pepper spray, and then that's when the police got called. And the police officer that I was with, like, ended up pulling her hair away from her face and then like pouring water on her face to try to run the pepper spray out. Like, it was his own water bottle and everything, and he was trying to help her, just because it's obviously painful, and she couldn't do anything at that point. She was already in handcuffs and stuff, and he felt bad for her because she was crying and just screaming about how painful it was. And I was like, I couldn't handle this. Couldn't do it.
No. Like,
I couldn't imagine that being the call I respond to. Like, and that's nothing. He was like, oh yeah, this was a boring day. Like, we didn't even have an eventful shift. I'm like, all this shit just happened.
Yeah, like, just imagine, like, how thick your skin is for just, like, nonsense. Just for, like, bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, how was your day? Like, oh, I had a lady piss herself and scream at me and tell me to, like, go fuck myself for, like, 3 hours straight. Or whatever had happened. Or, like, oh, yeah, this 13-year-old tried to commit suicide. And we had to go sit in the thing. Like, just, like, all this shit. And then, like, you know, I complain that my eyes hurt from staring at my computer. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I'm
It's
sitting in a safe environment.
like, oh,
all
man,
day.
I can't wait to go and get off and go to the gym after this. It's like these people are out here, like, just dealing with shit
Yeah.
all day.
I couldn't imagine.
No.
I personally just don't think I could do it. That's why I never pursued the career.
Definitely not. So is the progression of like a police officer, like when you first get in, like what do you know? I mean, I don't know. Like what do you do? Like if you were to like become a police officer, like what is your first like rookie street cop? Like you get to like riding a horse, you get to ride a horse. That's what I would want. I would want to ride a horse.
Not gonna lie, some department, literally one of the girls that I went to college with and graduated with actually moved to Colorado because their police department had horses, and so she got to eventually, it took a minute, become a horse cop. I don't remember what she called it, but
do like equestrian while riding horses.
Yeah,
and being a cop,
pretty much.
Wow.
But no, you pretty much start out as a street cop, and then you move your way up to detective, and then all that other stuff, all that other jazz you hear about. But like street cop could be anywhere from, I mean, it depends the department you go in from, but like writing tickets and having to meet like a quota.
What about highway patrol? Is that different?
Yeah, highway patrol is like,
I know it's just like just highway, obviously, but
basically the same.
Is it the same? It's the same. It's all the police.
It's like the same premise,
right?
You're just not responding to. You're responding to different types of calls.
Got it. And then, how do you become like an FBI agent? Is that, or like, how do you work in the FBI? I guess that's like my question. I guess like, is the progression like, okay, get in, like, what's my goal? Like, do I want to be a sheriff? Mm-hmm. Sheriff's the highest, right? Or is a deputy or chief? I don't know. What's the highest in like the, you know what I mean? When they like when the police department gives a speech on something that happened, like we don't know any information, or whoever does that, whoever the head is, like
usually the sheriff.
The sheriff. Okay, or whatever the highest thing is. Like, is that the goal, to be the highest, or is the highest to be like, oh, I want to do this, and then eventually I want to go in the FBI?
I don't know, because I feel like the most people, but this is the only from my experience at Sac State and going through the criminal justice program. Like, if you want to get in the FBI, a lot of people pursue that ahead of time, and it's like a long process to get into the FBI.
I guess, is that like the dream job?
No, not necessarily.
That seems like if you could be an FBI agent, that seems like a way more lax
I feel
job.
like
I don't know, I'm like underselling what FBI agents do, but like I just imagine them like in the movies having the jacket that says FBI, and then they come in after all the shit happens.
Yeah, that's exactly not what it is, but there's a lot of things in the FBI. The FBI is a large department, and there's many things.
Are you reading any good books?
I started reading The Picture of Dorian Gray, and it's very interesting. It poses a question about age, beauty, youth.
Yeah.
And it makes me depressed.
Does it?
The fact that we're getting older and we're approaching our 30s, and how much our society appreciates youth. But, okay, this is an interesting question, because I was actually on TikTok, and a girl I used to go to high school with, her boyfriend got plastic surgery. He got his nose done and his ears, like, lowered or something, because they used to be really out. I don't really know.
Like Goofy style.
Would you ever get plastic surgery?
I mean, initially, no. But
if you could afford it, there's no, like, financial restraint around it. Would you get plastic surgery?
No.
I feel like I wouldn't. Like, the only thing I would do to modify my face would be my teeth, is what I think. Is like
teeth and tits. Get you some just gigantic, like big,
like out here touching the microphone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there you go.
Real obnoxious ones.
You're paying for those.
Yeah. Well, money's not an option. We just discussed.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like men are not expected to live up to a certain way that women maybe are. Although, like, as men get older, our noses get bigger. Like, if I get one of these...
So do women.
If I get one of these fucking noses that's just, like... Not really. And also, I hate surgery. Why would I...
Yeah, why would you?
Like, why would I want to do that?
The one that I'm following on the Instagram stories had the nose procedure done, and I had sinus surgery, and a lot of the stuff is like recovery similar, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine going through that again.
Yeah.
Like that seems terrible. Having to sleep upright for like 4 months. No, thank you. Not being able to use a straw. No, thank you.
I feel like the nose is such a popular thing to get done, like a nose job, and it just never looks good. I feel like very seldom you see somebody and it's like, oh yeah, they actually look better now.
Yeah.
Like, not really. You just look fucking weird, man.
For the most part, I feel like I don't even notice a difference.
Really?
Well, it depends on the type of nose job, but like after a while, it just like, oh, that's your face. You kind of forget they had the old nose.
Yeah, I guess, but like it always looks weird. Like it always looks like a fake nose.
Yeah.
It always looks too like too sharp.
Isn't it weird that like, okay, we're going to evolve as humans. We're going to figure out how to do all these things. What's one thing we need to figure out how to do? And it's like, how do you make the face perfect? Like that was one thing we decided. Science, we need this.
We needed it. Someone had money. A doctor was like, I've been fixing broken legs for like 10 years. Like, your nose isn't broken, but like we could just fix it.
Yeah, I could break
like,
it myself.
I could just break it myself and we could fix it.
Yeah.
You can get like an extra toe or something.
Yeah, just get one added on there.
Yeah.
Also
like
one on
pinky.
for you. Anyway, have you read any good books recently?
Well, I read The Mountain Is You.
I Am the Mountain.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think
how was your journey into the self-help genre?
Well, the journey was, this probably could have been like a 20-page pamphlet with some bullet points and some nice like graphs. But instead it was a 240-page, really quick, easy read, which was fine. But like, there definitely was some good stuff in the book.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm about to read it.
And I can appreciate that. It repeated itself a lot. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of stuff that I just don't feel like applied to me.
Yeah, you were saying something about like how maybe somebody with more trauma would respond to it better than you.
It was just weird. So as you read this book, you'll see the first like half, it is talking about self-sabotage because that's what the book is. It's about mastering your self-sabotage and all this, whatever. Like, as you're reading, it's like, oh, this is good. Like, there is a lot of these, like, one-liners that are like, oh, these are really good. Like, that's basically what I took from it. It's just all these, like, one-liners that, like, kind of resonate. And, again, there was some good stuff that I definitely took away from it. And then it takes this weird turn to, like, trauma and, like, healing your trauma and letting that old self go. Like, a lot of that. And I'm like, I can't draw the line between, like, childhood trauma and like why I procrastinate. Like I just can't draw that line. It seems like a crazy thing to me. Like I get what she was saying in the book, but it just seemed like a really far reach for somebody that I don't think I have real like trauma like that like holds me down. I think I do self-sabotage and we all do.
Yeah.
But it also seems like it kind of contradicts itself a little bit. Like it just seems like it's she's kind of all over the place on like, oh, well, you got to trust your gut, but your gut is a reaction. It's not a predictor. And you should listen to it, but like not all the time, but sometimes, but maybe. And it just seems like it's kind of all over the place. And it just kind of made me feel worse, honestly. Cause then it just kind of got me thinking of like all this shit. And now I feel bad about like not doing things.
Yeah.
It's like now I'm not even allowing myself to just like relax. Like today I didn't feel good about not doing anything. This is like the first thing that I've done that's productive is us doing this podcast right now. Other than that, like I went to the gym this morning and then like sat around and returned to Target and went and picked up food. Like it's basically all I did, but it's like, why should I feel bad about that? Like this book basically just kind of pointed out all the things that like, yes, I do. And also just made it feel like when I realize I'm doing it, I should pinpoint like what the problem is, which I can appreciate, and then like flip it on its head and deal with it. And like, I just am feeling now it's like, oh, well, now you have to be doing something all the time. That's like what I took from the book. And I don't think that's work. I don't think that works for me, but I also just think I took it the wrong way.
Yeah,
So,
no, it was interesting while you were reading the book because when you first started reading it, you were very into it and you were like, this is great. I'm learning so many things. Then you got to like the middle and you're like, this is awful. And then you got into a very negative headspace.
yeah.
And then more towards the end of the book, you started to read it very slowly. And then I feel like it got more like it picked back up and went towards the positive end. And it was just like a roller coaster of you reading this book. And I was like, I don't know if this is healthy for you. I don't think it is.
So.
Am I gonna?
But I like reading the good stuff.
Yes.
Obviously, like anytime, like I would recommend the book to anybody. Like I'm not going to tell somebody not to read it because I think anytime you can read something that makes you think about yourself and your own behavior and your own tendencies, I think that's helpful, right? Take it with a grain of salt, which is what I tried to do, but it was a lot of reading salt and it just like a lot of salt. And I was like, fuck, man, I just read like 100 pages of like all the shit that doesn't apply to me, that I don't think applies to me. And then it gets me thinking like, does it not apply to me because I'm like suppressing it? And then I'm like overthinking it. I'm like, is this what she's talking about? It's like, I don't think I have trauma. So therefore I'm like rejecting it and suppressing it. And I'm not dealing with it when really I'm reading about dealing with trauma, but I don't think I have trauma when I'm suppressing it. I need to deal with like all this like hamster wheel of like, now I don't even know what to believe. I don't even know what's real. I don't even know like what feelings are real now.
I'm very interested to read this book and see how I feel. I go
I feel
through
like
the same stages as you.
I feel like you're way more emotionally stronger than I am. Mm-hmm. So like it'll be interesting to see how you take it. Cause like if you don't like it, you'll just be like, I'm not fucking reading this. This is stupid. And we're like, I am like, well, I want to explore. Let's get into the fucking weeds of my emotions. Like
I've already read the first page like 3 times and then I went through and looked at some of the stuff you highlighted and I'm all like, you need to take this with a grain of salt. And some of the things I even laughed at. Like I was like, okay. But I've already read self-help books. So
this is the first one I've read.
Yeah, I've learned from a lot of that genre that like it repeats itself over and over again. All the lessons, like there's only so much you can learn in a self-help book.
Pretty much.
So I'm not quite sure how I'll like this one, but I'll probably read it.
But it was honestly really quick. Like you could probably finish it in like a week because the way it's broken down and the length and the size of the text. Like it's a really quick read. It honestly is.
Yeah, but with her too, I have her book of short stories. The author, I have her same book that has all the short ones. Though. And I really like that one because I like that one to read it and then journal off like my thoughts from those short essays. Yeah. And so I feel like it probably will have I'll pull something worth value out of that book.
We'll pull at least one thing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Which is like, I mean, that's the goal for me reading a book. Basically is like I need to pull something for this that I can learn from, I can think about more, do something from it. I don't want to read a book and just be like, why did I read that book?
Sure. And I think a lot of it too is like I have basically now like identified myself with like the 3 things that I like to do. Mm-hmm. It's podcast stuff, music, still like to make music. And as dorky as it is, I like taking my drone out and I like taking pictures and taking videos and like making content with the videos and stuff. I do enjoy that. It's like those are the 3 things I like to do. Those take a lot of fucking time.
Yes.
And so like as I'm reading this book, I'm like, okay, like how can it's like I can't pick one for some reason. And maybe if I was to just pick one and go with it, like the book would have helped me a little bit more. But instead it was like seemed like it was coaching me to like do everything even more, even harder. And it's like, it's really hard, A, because we work regular jobs, and B, like when we get to the weekend, sometimes I don't feel like sitting in front of a computer for 10 hours.
Because we just did that all week.
We just did that all fucking week. And then I don't allow myself to not do it. Like then I feel like shit because I'm sitting in front of the computer and I don't feel like doing it, or because I'm not doing it. Like honestly, today was the first day in a long time, first weekend day where I wasn't up here on the computer. I mean, honestly, when was the last weekend day where I'm like, all right, I'm like,
I got to spend like 4 hours on the computer. I'm going to be in this room for 4 hours.
Hey, I'm going to be upstairs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it felt any better or worse, but now I'm just confused.
So,
I need a therapist.
Maybe. We would probably all benefit from therapy. Can we pause for a sec? Because I really have to pee.
So back to books, I guess. I'm reading that Gory Details book.
Can you give me a little background on this book? Because I don't remember. It's this lady who just
It's this lady,
studies it.
She's she works for National Geographic, and I think she was a forensic scientist or something like that. Now she just writes on it, and she basically started a blog back in like 2010 called Gory Details about all of this weird stuff that she's gone out and done. And now she's like written a book and also added some that she didn't add on her blog that she thought was a little too like controversial or risque or whatever. I'm not that far into it. I'm probably like 90 pages in. It's pretty fun. Like weird. She was writing about these weird cases where pets, like if they were in a house where somebody died, dogs and cats eating the people.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
And there was another case of like a hamster eating one of the people. Like, she was writing about that, and she thinks they think, they obviously don't know. There's so little cases, and there's so little cases that are like actually documented correctly. But she thinks like for dogs that when dogs like lick, it like sometimes the lick can like turn into a nibble. Right? And like, I think when the owner dies, the lick turns into a nibble and then they get anxious. And so they nibble and then they taste blood. And then like the lizard brain of the dog kicks in and is like, oh, that's good.
Natural instinct.
Yeah. And then they eat because they've found it's not like the dog was hungry because they've come and found like the owner's face eaten off or like its arm chewed off with a bowl of food next to it or whatever. So that was one of them.
That's interesting. I actually read a study once that cats are attracted to dying humans because dying humans give off more heat and cats are attracted to heat. So they'll like position themselves around like people who are dying.
Weird.
That was weird to me. It's like a fun fact.
Yeah, I guess there might be like some science to it because I guess as you die, like all the bubbles and the chemicals or whatever, they start to go off. And she actually talks about, I don't know why I can't remember it, but actually I know why I can't remember it because it's like one sentence in the book, but like talks about when, humans die, what happens to the body and all this stuff, and how forensic science still is not that great at predicting like how long a body has been dead.
I've heard that, yeah.
It's still really tough depending on decay and temperature and location and age, weight, all this stuff. But there's lots of these weird companies and things that help with that. And she was talking about like a maggot farm.
Ugh.
And there's like 20 in the US, like licensed maggot farms that will help. I guess they sometimes bring cadavers in and they put the maggots on there and they like study how long, like, okay, what do the maggots look like after a body's been on for 10 days, 8 days, whatever. What does it look like? How many larvae are there? Like all this shit. And she's writing all about it and it's gross, but like, it's pretty fucking interesting that like there's people out here doing that.
Isn't it interesting to think that in 2022 we're still doing that?
Yeah.
Also, like a part of my curriculum was forensic science it was a whole section about, it was like back and forth on it. We were never really given an answer, but being like a fake science and trying to be thrown out in court and trying to have all these things like, is this real or is it not, is what they're showing through all these forensics actual, can we believe it? So I can see what you're saying there because they don't know how long a body has been dead. Yeah. Like, is this time frame that they actually provided accurate? How do they know that? Exactly. They don't really know that.
And that's it. Yeah. I mean, that's not something that you can like get really wrong. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't matter how long a body's been dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. The book's really interesting. She was talking about the one that I was reading out loud to you because you're a psycho the other night was like how is it boat flies? I think it's either boat flies or bloat flies. How they can like contaminate a crime scene because
I remember this,
they like land on it because for some reason this type of fly is really attracted to like blood and like pus. And so when a body dies, like all of a sudden these flies pop up and they're like taking the blood and like moving it all over the place.
Because weren't you saying something about like they eat it and then they go and fly to like not even that far away, land and then poop it out and then have contaminated the crime scene?
Exactly. Or vice versa, they were flying around somewhere else and brought somebody else's DNA from, outside. Let's say someone was killed in an apartment, and like somebody downstairs, the fly was down there and landed on a food plate downstairs and then flew up to this dead person's apartment and put that person from downstairs DNA there. Now all of a sudden this random person's DNA is on this crime scene. Mm-hmm. It's pretty rare, but she said that somebody did wrongfully get convicted because of something of this nature, and it was like determined like, well, this doesn't make sense why this person would be here. Like, what if it was moved by fly? Just like crazy shit. And also they poop too. That's like, that's the whole thing, is that they poop the DNA.
That's interesting.
So yeah. It'll be a cool book. It'll be a really interesting book.
I feel like you have a really good book picker. Like, I feel like my picker is a little broken. Like, you haven't,
in my brain.
Yeah. Like, you haven't really gotten a book that you don't, other than The Mountain Is You. You haven't really gotten a book that you don't like. Like, you've liked and you've enjoyed all your books. Like, I've definitely had to stop halfway through my books and be like, I can't finish this book. I'm not even going to power through it.
But sometimes you're getting fiction too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of the books that I stop.
I feel like with nonfiction, the odds are so much higher because you're going to learn something. Even if it's like half-assed and stupid and makes me depressed, like The Mountain Is You, at least I'm like learning something.
I think what I've learned about myself is I do really enjoy all those like cheesy, like I like all the like stupid, mindless reality shows. I kind of like the stupid, mindless books, but I'm also, where I struggle with books is like, I'm taking the time to read this book. I don't want to read 300 pages of basically like mindless, just fun. Mm-hmm. Like, I'd rather just waste an hour watching a movie that's just like that.
Got it.
Than reading a book.
Yeah, so far, it doesn't feel like I've wasted time reading a book. Mm-hmm. Every book that I've read since I started reading has been really great, honestly. Like, it would be hard for me to pick, like, a top 3 at this point. Like, it would just be a rotating 3. Yomi Park.
That was one of my favorites.
Sleep Book.
That's in your top 3?
I think so. I love that book. That book was really cool. And maybe Talking with Strangers. I don't know. Remember Hooked? Remember when I got that book? Mm-hmm. That book was awesome. I learned a lot from that book. Human Body book was really good. As far as intriguing information, probably those 3. I don't know.
What is your favorite lesson you've learned from a book? What's something that you've like regurgitated and told to many people because you read this in a book?
That sleep is way more important than you think. And does.
How?
Like, it helps with your ability to remember things. Your brain doesn't know when it's underslept. So people that operate on like 5 hours of sleep, I'm like, I don't need sleep.
Don't know.
It's like, great. You don't know that you're fucking yourself over and that you're not cognitively like functioning like on all cylinders. Because your brain can't recognize it.
That's one thing that you told me about the sleep book when you were reading it was you can never catch up on sleep. You can't be like, okay, I'm only going to sleep 3 hours tonight, but I'm going to catch up the next night by sleeping 12 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that was interesting to me.
That whole concept is kind of confusing, but basically how it works is like you need to hit your REM and your non-REM cycles when you sleep in order to sort out the things that you've taken in those days and move that to your hippocampus and move that to your frontal cortex and move stuff around. That's basically what your brain is doing while it's sleeping. And that's the theory behind dreams too. Mm-hmm. Is like, again, I'm going to fucking butcher this, but I'm going to try. Whatever this part of your brain is, I think this is your frontal cortex.
I agree. It's
like moving the stuff that you took in during the day as you sleep back here. As it's moving, that's what they think dreams are, is like literally the information that you took, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a sight, a sound, something. As it's moving, those neurons are kind of just like grazing, like your brain as it goes back, right? Because sometimes you see something during the day, and then you like dream about it later, like that could happen, right? A lot of times dreams are random, but like that's the theory behind dreams, is like one of the theories that he talks about. And when you're not getting that sleep, right? And this is why older people have a tough time remembering things, is because they're not getting as much sleep. Therefore, they're not hitting their non-REM cycle. Your non-REM is like these big pulsing waves, right? REM is like, if you were to look at it like a brain scanner, right? Mm-hmm. The non-REM is like these big kind of pulsing waves. It's literally like these big pulsing waves are going like poof, poof as you sleep. That's why older people, they're not getting as much of the sleep. They're not hitting their cycles. That information that they got is not getting moved back to your like long-term memory or dump it. Like, hey, I don't need this shit, right? So they can't take on anymore. That's why they have a hard time remembering things. And also, I'm not done. Old people, they used to think that like, oh, you don't need as much sleep when you get older. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not true. As you get older, you don't produce, I might be wrong, you don't produce enough adenosine, which is the chemical that builds sleep pressure that makes you tired, basically. You don't produce as much of that as you get older, which they don't know why evolutionarily, whatever that word is, they don't know why that is, but they know that that's why. As you get older, you do need as much sleep as you do like when we're our age. But like your body doesn't produce enough of the natural chemicals to do that. And it's just sort of this cycle, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It kind of lines up with what I was like, because I got an AA in psychology, so I took a good amount of psychology courses. And one of the big takeaways I remember was they always told you should study at night, like more towards the end of the day, because you're going to go to sleep with that information and it's going to be the most fresh on your brain. And then when you wake up in the morning, you will have somehow transferred that into your long-term memory.
Totally.
And I was like, I never understood that, because I'm always been like, I'm more productive in the morning. So why wouldn't I study in the morning when I'm more productive?
You're more productive in the morning, but your memory isn't as good.
Yeah.
Like imagine like, I mean, the book is like just full of these studies of like taking people in, having them remember something at the beginning of the day, having them something remember at the end of the day, 8 hours of sleep, 6 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, like both. And it's like 10 out of 10 times, 99% of the time, whatever the fuck, if you study before you go to sleep and you get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you're going to remember that better than when you studied it in the morning.
Yeah. Which is exactly what they would always tell me in psychology classes. Yeah. So it's very interesting. Like, I couldn't imagine just studying people and watching them like that to find out this information.
Yeah.
And then we're all over here like, that seems skeptical. Like, I'm over here at like state university, like, they told me this X amount of times, and I'm like, that seems skeptical.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah.
They're probably wrong.
How many studies have really been done?
Yeah. Or like caffeine. This was interesting too.
Oh, your favorite portion.
Yeah. So, and alcohol. So caffeine, it doesn't make you feel, it doesn't like give you doesn't like give you energy in a sense. It basically tricks your brain into thinking you've been awake for less hours. It's literally telling your brain like, oh, instead of being awake for 10 hours, I've only been awake for 4. So I'm ready to fucking go. And then you have the caffeine crash. And then you're like, oh, I've been up for 20 hours. Like, I need to go to fucking sleep. And then you crash.
Yeah. Didn't you say that like you should stop drinking caffeine like 12 hours or something ridiculous like that before bed?
Yeah. It has a half-life of 6 hours. So if you drink coffee at 2, or if you drink coffee at like noon and you go to bed at 8, then you're still going to have a little less than half of caffeine in your body when you go to sleep. Or if you drink caffeine at 2 and you go to bed at, 8, you're going to have half of the caffeine still in your body. And again, when people drink coffee at night and they're like, oh, I go to sleep just fine. You might go to sleep just fine. You're not getting the quality of sleep that you could.
And that's the same with alcohol.
And that's like this crazy thing for me reading it is like, you don't even know, like you literally think you're getting good sleep. You think you're getting this great sleep. Like, oh, I can drink coffee, or like, oh, I'm going to drink alcohol, right? Like we're drinking a lot right now, which is bad for our sleep, but like who gives a fuck? We haven't drank in a month. Until tomorrow, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, you're also all playing basketball.
Well,
and you're
today
like,
I fucking played like shit anyway, and I felt tired. I'm like, I didn't even drink last night. I didn't eat late last night. I didn't drink coffee after like 8. So like, what does that mean? I'm just tired today, so who gives a shit? But yeah, like when you drink alcohol and caffeine, it affects your sleep, and you don't even know that you're getting bad sleep. Like, oh, I slept fine. It's like, but you didn't. Like, you probably woke up a couple times in the middle of the night. You probably very light sleep. You probably didn't go deep into your cycles and all this shit. And it's crazy. I don't want to say like it's life changing, but it kind of did. Like,
you've been very serious about your sleep since.
And also like blue light Blue light glasses, don't do anything. Like, all blue light does is it basically stops the thing from like making you tired. So if you're staring at your phone before you go to bed and there's all this blue light on your TV or whatever, like it's making you less tired in a sense. It's making the chemical that makes you tired and make you fall into sleep be suppressed. Same with like lights that are on like during the night, right? Like he talks about this in the book and like on his podcast and stuff. Something as simple as just having like a sleep routine, which I haven't done yet. We haven't really done yet, which is totally fine. Like I'm not trying to be a psycho about my sleep yet.
I feel like we kind of have a sleep routine.
We kind of have a sleep routine, but he's like, even something as simple as just like turning a lamp off and like being in a dimly lit room can help you a lot go to sleep. What I do like about him in his book is he's not trying to preach this like psychotic, you have to get pure sleep. Live this lifestyle. He's like, the toothpaste is out of the bottle, dude. Like technology exists around us. Like we can't get around it. People are going to be on their phones, whatever. But like there are things that you can do to like help you get better sleep. Give yourself like more sleep opportunity, right? Give yourself, if you want to sleep for, again, 7 to 9 hours, and I do this, don't turn off the TV and then go, okay, I'm ready to go to sleep. Like, don't do that. Like, get in bed, turn off the lights, or like do something to make you tired, right? Like he says, like reading a book is not like the best thing because you have the light on, but if it's a soft light like this one and you don't have the TV on, it's probably okay. But if you're sitting there like on your phone or watching TV and you're like, oh cool, my show's over, turn it off and you go to sleep, like that's not giving yourself good sleep opportunity. Yeah, whatever. I'm preaching now. This is boring.
Another question about sleep, and then we could stop the topic. What were you saying about fighting sleep?
If you're fighting sleep, don't fight sleep. Just let yourself go to sleep. The nap thing.
I love naps.
From what I remember, he didn't say naps were bad, and he also said that our circadian rhythm, right? We all have one. It does take a dip in the afternoon. It does take a dip.
It's natural.
It is natural to like, you know, everybody's like, oh, after lunch, right? You're like, oh, I'm tired because I ate so much. It's like, no, it's because like we'll all have like this really weird dip in our circadian rhythm. Like I do always feel tired at like 1 or 2, right?
Oh, I agree. I feel like
that's also how 5 Hour Energy made all their money is like, you feel tired at fucking 2, drink 800 milligrams of caffeine, you know, in Europe and stuff. They close for lunch. They close to go take a nap.
Yeah.
And they found that these people that live in those places that work there live longer because they take naps.
Remember when we watched the Zac Efron show and we watched about the blue zones?
Yeah.
That was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that one's interesting because it's just this perfect like melting pot of like this diet that seems to work, genetics, sleep. I don't think it works for everybody. Obviously it doesn't. But yeah, that one was really interesting. But yeah, the naps part, I think it works for some people and it works for doesn't work for others. Like for me, I'm not a big nap person.
I used to be a big nap person. I feel like I'm not a big nap person anymore. If I were to take a nap now, I don't think I would be able to sleep at night.
Yeah. So you see, yeah, that's what he said in the book is like, if you are trying to catch up on sleep on a nap, like that's, you know, I guess if that's your opportunity to get your sleep, like great. But if you slept all through the night and you still feel like taking a nap, then you need to either assess your circadian rhythm and assess like, am I waking up too early? Am I not getting as much sleep as I thought? But he said, naps aren't terrible.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions because I just keep coming up with them in my head. So remember the other day when I was telling you about how days when I work out, I find that I sleep really well, but days when I don't, I find out that I sleep terribly. My sleep quality is just very light and I'm waking up to any sound that's happening. Does he mention anything about that in the book?
He does.